And happy Monday, and welcome to a special edition of Husker Online Live. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, as we will go live when it's necessary. And in this case, we felt it was definitely necessary with the news of Tony White, reported first by our affiliate and partner, War Chant in Tallahassee. War Chant of the On3 Network broke the news this morning, Sip, that Tony White is set to be the next defensive coordinator in FSU. Earlier this year, Mike Norvell, after a 1-9 start, fired both his OC and DC. They named Gus Malzahn the OC over the weekend, and there was still that D coordinator spot. And according to War Chant, it looks like Tony White is going to be the next defensive coordinator at Florida State.
Would you say, barring like a late snafu?
Here's the one thing that nobody really has a good answer to, and why, like, the national folks, like our own Pete Nakos, is hesitant or couldn't pull the trigger all the way, is there is a big buyout on Tony White, where in his new contract that Trev Alberts and Matt Rhule and they negotiated for him to leave, to not have a buyout tied to him leaving, it would have had to have been for another head coaching job. So in this case, Florida State could be on the hook for the rest of the contract, which is not the norm for assistant contracts.
Nope. Okay, so thank you for covering that. Now, the question on everybody's mind, Sean, is why is Tony White making a move to a school in Florida State that was 2-10? Why make this move, Sean?
You know, I think there's a lot of things, but I'll go back to this. I mean, Indiana, the 56-7, they're 5-1, okay? Going to Indiana, 56-7 loss. And the defense,
Nebraska was 5-1.
The defense couldn't get a stop. And, you know, they couldn't win at the line of scrimmage. They couldn't win in coverage on 50-50 balls.
Okay.
And that was kind of the start. And then they played really well at Ohio State. So you're like, okay, they overcome that.
21-17 loss.
But then they come back home.
And then
they have UCLA.
Weird. Right.
And you're like, okay, they're going to get bowl eligible against UCLA. Well, they're on the field against UCLA for 27 of the first 30 plays of the football game. UCLA had a 13 and a 14, play scoring drive back to back. And UCLA converted, I want to say 5 or 6 third downs.
They were 6 for 10 on third down conversions at halftime.
But to start the game, they were like 5 of 6.
Okay.
I mean, they couldn't get a punt. They were winning every third down.
Oh, I got you.
And UCLA held the ball for 14 and a half of the first 16 minutes of the game. And the next week, Nebraska loses. It was a terrible loss.
So now Nebraska goes into a bye week.
And we know what happened after that. Marcus Satterfield was removed as the play caller, remained on
offense,
remained on staff.
Right, on offense.
And they bring in Dana Holgerson from the outside.
Right.
Well, Tony White obviously remained as the DC, but from the outside, Phil Snow came to Lincoln. Now, he was, quote, consulting all year, but he never was in the kitchen.
Right.
And then all of a sudden,
or he wasn't. Then he was in the kitchen.
And I don't care how you spin that. When you are the head of a kitchen and your boss says, yeah, you're not cooking as well, let's bring in somebody else just to see what you're doing to make sure you're doing things right. Or
there could have been some tension.
Give some advice on what you should do. And that person is your boss's old defensive coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
That to me, that didn't sit well. That's just my 10,000-foot view of that moment.
Yeah, because we never had any evidence. Now, I didn't. Now, I can only speak for myself. In that moment, on that weekend, which was the weekend of November, like November 11th, around that territory, I never heard anything from, insiders, from my sources, that suggested Tony White was upset or there was tension between Rhule and White. I never heard anything like that. Now, of course, you'll wonder now, in what these situations do, Sean, it's awkward, because this type of situation, Tony White making this move to Florida State, 2-10 Florida State, it raises more questions than we have answers.
Because Mike Norvell could get fired next year.
Right. You see, that's awkward. It's awkward because it raises more questions than we have answers. Like, who's he taking with him? It raises that question.
And I know there's a report out there about Terrence Knighton.
Right.
We can't confirm that.
Right.
I mean, that's hard to, I have not been able.
He's the defensive line coach for Nebraska. And I don't know. The only thing, when these things happen, Sean, you start recounting a bunch of little vignettes that may or may not mean anything. After the Iowa game, I ran into Terrence on the field. Not after the Iowa game.
Wisconsin.
Yes, thank you. After the Wisconsin win, and there was a lot of jubilation, and on the part of the players and even some of the coaches. But he didn't seem, his reaction was curious to me. It was curious. So that now when things like this happen, you start looking back on some things that you are kind of like, that was kind of weird. And that was kind of weird.
And, speaking probably for Nebraska fans, I think the hardest thing about this is Nebraska fans want one thing, stability.
They want wins.
They want wins.
And they want stability. And now what you're looking at, and I think this is going to happen. I think Tony White ultimately will go. I trust War Chant. There's probably some things that some finality, some final.
The buyout situation.
Items that some I's that have to be dotted and T's that have to be crossed, all that. But what you're faced with now is getting a new defensive coordinator. As you mentioned, they already made a move on the offensive coordinator, Marcus Satterfield, but you don't even know if Holgorsen is here for the long haul. So there's that item that's hanging out there. And then you think that Rhule at least has a decision to make about Ed Foley. Now, Sean, that's a clean sweep of coordinators right now. That's 3 coordinators and some major questions. And it could end up being Nebraska goes into next season with 3 new coordinators.
Well, and let's take it another step. Evan Cooper carried a coordinator tag. He was passing game coordinator.
Good point.
I mean, and that was before the season started.
Right. So there was instability in July. That was July. I would believe that was July 4th. That happened. The Cooper news broke. So that happened, Sean, pretty recently, July 4th. So you're right. There's been a lot of instability.
Yeah, and it's hard because we get such a clear picture, a positive picture that we get access to. The only clue, you and I both made this comic, Tony White, the last few weeks at the podium
seemed very relaxed. Like curiously relaxed.
And he always would go back to this kind of talking point. We just do whatever the head man says, or we follow the vision of the head man. And like, it almost felt like that was over the top.
And we commented that in the moment. So just so people understand, me and you had that conversation in the moment.
It just, that didn't sound natural.
No, it sounded kind of weird. So now again, that's the sort of things that sort of add up in your mind when something like this springs up and you're thinking to yourself, why would Tony White, age 45, has had 2 pretty good seasons at Nebraska, make this move? Now, we should talk about, Sean, what kind of season he had. We've addressed it. It wasn't a resoundingly great season, right, for the defense. It was good, though. I'll give you an example of a mixed bag, okay? It isn't, you can say, and I noticed War Chant did this, you can say it's a top 20 defense. That's in terms of total defense. They're 19th. You could also say they're not a top 50 defense because in terms of yards allowed per play, which is what I go to, they're 54. They allowed 5.39 yards per play. Well, that's not wrong. I mean, there's such a big discrepancy that it's kind of confusing. 19th in total defense. Sean, why would that be, by the way? 19th in total defense, 54th in average yards allowed per play.
Because you're on the field less plays because of the style of offense you play.
Bam.
If you're playing a 60-play style offense versus an 80-play style offense.
Like USC is more of a quick strike, right?
And, back in the day, like
UCLA, they're not really a quick strike, but Ohio State would be a quick strike, right?
John Papuchis, actually, who's coincidentally at Florida State, told me this years ago.
What?
The defensive-minded head coaches prefer to play a style of offense that protects their defensive numbers, meaning huddle, slow it down.
Style of offense, yeah.
Yeah, where if you're a offensive-minded head coach, you want to speed it up, and then it's really hard to have good defensive statistics because of the number of plays you play because your offense plays more plays.
Right. So Rhule's a defensive-minded head coach.
And he believes more in that philosophy of a 65 play game versus an 85 play
So-
game. Or Scott Frost wanted to play 100 plays a game.
Right. So I think it's important that we point out that Nebraska was 54th in yards allowed per play, almost a yard more than last year, by the way, Sean. It was 5.4 this year, 4.6 last year. Now, that's not to at all denigrate what Tony's done. Nebraska was 14th in rushing defense. That's good. They were, generally speaking, very good against the run and came off a fabulous performance against Iowa. 52nd in passing defense. I'm not going to bore you with all these stats. Just suffice to say, the defense wasn't quite as good as it was last year. Either really statistically or just kind of by what you saw.
But then I'll throw this at you. There were some outlier moments, like the Colorado game.
Yeah.
Pure dominance.
Beautiful.
I mean, they held Colorado to their worst game of the year.
Yeah.
The Ohio State game. They
shut down the run.
I mean, they made Ohio State look silly.
Shut down the run game.
And then the game against Iowa was
ferocious.
Was one of the, other than one play where the defensive call did have 6 players in position to make the tackle.
They did. They gave up one bad play, but I remarked to you during that game, at one point I said, Sean, the defense is ferocious right now. They were playing with their hair on fire.
And so that's why all of this is hard to wrap. But then you have such extreme opposites like Indiana. Even the USC, they couldn't get a stop on USC.
Couldn't get a stop.
I mean, USC really carved them up.
And let's face it, Sean, they gave up 407 to Wisconsin. That's what I mean. Mixed bag. Nebraska gave up 407 yards to Wisconsin, right? They did.
In the passing game mainly, too.
Yeah. So it's kind of a mixed bag. It's not. That's why I say it wasn't. Tony did not have resounding success here. I still regard this as a loss, but not now. Now we have to address, I think, what does Matt do?
It's really hard, though, for a Big Ten defense to be statistically towards the nation's worst because all the styles in this league play a less play per game style.
Not
all, but most.
Yeah.
So all like the Penn States, the Michigans, the Ohio States,
the Illinois,
Iowa, they play a style where their defense is going to have less at bat, less plate appearances to use a baseball.
So that's why the yard. Thank you for pointing that out because that's why the yards per play is more important than the yards per game, right?
And points per game.
And points.
There's always 2 key stats of the defense: yards per play, points per game.
Okay, so scoring,
and I'll throw red zone defense in there too.
Okay. I didn't even look that one up, but scoring, in terms of scoring defense, Nebraska has allowed 19.8, which is 19th in the country. That's top 20. Okay. Now that's not as good as last year. They were 18.3 last year. So if you look at those stats and you're a Seminoles fan, you say, wow, we're getting something here. It's just the common thing though. You got to sort of, it's hard. I don't begrudge a Seminole fan would really have to delve into this conversation to fully understand it, and they would do very well to listen to our show to get a good grasp on it. But Tony did a good job, and now the other part of this, Sean, is he's losing some guys. The defense is losing some key guys. They're losing their top 3 tacklers, 4 of their top 7, 7 of the top 12, and the big one is a guy that
Chumpmacher, Ty Robinson.
Yeah, and Bill Bush on the show today, on the radio show, thought that Robinson's playing at a first round level.
I'd not heard that from anybody else.
I haven't heard it either. But
I mean, I think he could be like a 3rd rounder.
Well, yeah, I think we're splitting hairs a little bit. When I watched the Wisconsin game, my thought was he's looking like a 3rd or 2nd rounder to me.
Yeah, and that first round,
low first round
as a 6-year guy though.
24, I think.
6 years of college, though.
I think he's age 24.
Because in the SEC, a guy like Ty Robinson only plays 3 years of college football.
So anyway, just getting off that, the Nebraska defense. It's this kind of this. I said this last year. I think they lose a lot, but they have a lot back. I mean, there's still a lot coming back. I mean, you're talking about a guy like Mekhi Bayer, Malcolm Hartzog, Sierra Wright, Marcus Buford, Stephon Thompson, Jamari Butler, Shavers, Williams, Umanalen, Lenhart, Judy. They got some McGahee if they.
Yeah,
Shavers.
But what's the portal going to look like now?
That's the question.
That's Monday next week. Now, Gabe Ervin Jr. went in, and I want to get into all that. But before I get to that,
Yeah,
our special Husker Online live show brought to you by one of Steve Sipple's favorite things now, Mando.
Oh yeah.
If you are looking to smell good like Steve Sipple,
yeah,
and want to try something out, Mando, it's premium, 100% natural, organic, fragrance-free oil, dermatologist recommended, deodorants, soaps, you name it. They have all of the products, and we've got a special for you with Mando. Get the Mando starter pack, which is already discounted when you locate the starter pack. Comes with deodorant, cream tube deodorant, plus 2 free products of your choice and free shipping. Use the promo code Husker, and we are going to give you another $5 off that. So the total package equates to 40% off. Go to shopmando.com. Use the promo code Husker. Get $5 off. That equates to 40% off the Mando starter pack. Great stocking stuffer. Throw it in your husband's stocking. Throw it in.
Yeah.
You just load up some Mando. Say this is courtesy of the Husker Online Show and Stephen M. Sipple. Merry Christmas.
Yeah, think about your life right now, Sean. How quickly this stuff happens, and it's moving fast. And a lot of guys out there are working 2 jobs, or in some cases 3. And sometimes you let that smell good part slide. You don't have to.
Today, I barely had time to take a shower.
Right.
I was on with Jeff Cameron, our good friend at Florida State, this morning on his show.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the rare time you'll see me on a camera unshowered. And I needed Mando.
Well, it isn't like you got greasy hair.
No, but I was wearing a Dodgers t-shirt.
Okay.
But let's talk balls.
Yeah. What did Cameron think about this?
It happened so quickly, but they had confirmed in their circles up there that this was happening. But obviously there's some logistical things that need to get inked out still.
It's tense for reporters.
Which you and I have been through these things enough to know things can always backfire. But
I know.
This one, when things are backfiring, usually you or I or somebody, you hear something. We haven't heard a thing from anybody at all
as he checks his phone.
I'm getting texts right now from our staff here, but there's been nothing at all. When you talk about what's going on with this story and any questioning of it all, because we had been hearing even before the Iowa game that there was something to watch with Tony White. But you can't just put that out there because it wouldn't be responsible, but it was on the radar for sure.
No, it's worth addressing. And we did address it
in the post-game show.
In the post-game show, I was asked about it on a Omaha radio station last week, and it was Josh Peterson, and he obviously had some information. So yeah, this is again, barring some last minute issue, Tony White will not be Nebraska's defensive coordinator next season, and I regard it as a tough blow for Coach Rhule, and it really points up this question: how much do Nebraska fans trust the head coach? Because right now, there's a lot on his plate. He has to make some really good decisions quickly, right?
And that brings in our first super chat from Bob Johnson. Is the pressure getting to Rhule? Is that concerning?
Well, I don't know exactly where Bob's coming from on that. There's pressure. Does this signify pressure on Rhule that Tony White's leaving? I don't know. I'm having trouble putting together in my mind why he's asking that question.
No, I think just the pressure that maybe behind the scenes has led to this, but we don't know what it was like behind the scenes.
Maybe it was fine.
Maybe it was fine. Maybe it wasn't.
Yeah. I'm not, I will say this. You talk to people, I talk to people. I'm not 100% convinced it was fine. Rhule, though, is going to tell you something different.
I will say this again, the Indiana game on, things changed. I mean, you just felt it. You could see it. And then they came back and had that turnaround game at Ohio State.
Yeah.
They lost.
Yeah.
But they then
gave up some pass plays.
UCLA was after Indiana, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. UCLA was after Ohio State.
Sean,
it went Indiana, Ohio State, UCLA. I know it gets jumbled, but that's how it went.
So that little stretch there,
yeah, it was huge.
Where they played theoretically 2 college football playoff teams and lost to both, almost beat one,
but was really strong in one of them. But those catastrophic losses, and that when something extreme happens, Sean, this is something you should. I'm going to teach you something here. I always say this: when there's extreme circumstance, Sean, on a football team, that's often when you see the changes. 56-7 was an extreme circumstance that nobody saw coming. Now, of course, there was tension. Hell, there was tension between us. I mean, there was tension. And that's what 56-7 does. You know what else? You know what else causes tension? When UCLA comes into Lincoln, when you're trying to get bowl eligible and does what you said it did, has the ball for 14 and a half of the first 16 minutes, that's extreme. That's extreme. What happens when something's extreme? A head coach brings in analysts from the outside. Sure, that might have. I mean, it makes you wonder if Tony White's mind was like, "Hey, so you're not confident in me?" So,
well, think about what that UCLA loss set up. It set up that you thought at that moment they might be at 5 wins again this year.
Right.
They may not go to a bowl game, and then if we're 5-7 again, this is not good.
So perhaps that's what Bob was referring to. Bob Johnson, is that was his name? Super Chat
Bob Johnson, yeah.
Maybe that's what he's referring to.
All right, let's move. Will Duncan, any confirmation from your sources that Knighton is leaving with White? That will hurt big time. Look, there's nothing on that, and I can tell you, I spoke with a recruit and his high school coach that is a D lineman, and they've heard nothing. So I will say this: the players at Nebraska have not been told anything.
Mm-hmm.
The recruits have not heard a word. So
yeah, this is again. So I'm glad you mentioned that because the timing's not good.
Signing day is on Wednesday. And so this War Chant report from On 3 comes out with Tony White leaving. That's it. Now there's been some other loose reports that Terrence Knighton, but the War Chant is a pretty firm report.
Is it possible now we haven't had this conversation or this part of the conversation. Was it possible that Rhule and White wanted this to come out after signing day?
Possibly, but you know how this world works. I mean, this had been in the underground world of Nebraska football for several weeks.
The potential for this move, I'd say 2 weeks. 2 weeks.
In the underground world, there are message boards that get off our message boards, and they can say more than say we can. Mm-hmm. And in the speculation.
Got it.
Was out there for several weeks.
What, several? Or I'd say 2, right?
A few weeks, yeah. I mean, I think it was.
And I don't know about several.
Another thing I'll bring up about the defense, they didn't give up a rushing touchdown this year at home.
At home.
First time, I believe, in history.
See, it is. It's an interesting conversation about the defense. I'd say generally it had a very strong year, but you can't ignore those colossal sort of epic letdowns. I mean, that's what Indiana was. It was a colossal epic letdown. I'm going to say UCLA was a colossal epic letdown.
And the team did lift today.
God dang, Rhule. I guarantee if Rhule heard me say that, he'd want to punch me probably. They lost 27-20.
Well, you remember how mad I was.
Right. I'm talking about getting down. If I'm going to sell it to somebody, Nebraska got down 27-7 on its home field against a team that's not going bowling. You had all this on the line against UCLA, which was playing pretty good football at that point. But how do you let that happen as a defense? How do you get to this point where you can't get off the field against UCLA?
Or the week before, you shut down Ohio State.
Yeah. How does it happen that UCLA comes in and throws the first punch? And really, the one that absorbed it the most was Nebraska's defense. How does that happen? That's what I mean by failure. That was a failure.
And they put a young corner and Jeremiah Charles out early, and they had to pull him out. I mean, he gave up 3 catches on 3 targets, and then they had to go back to Tommy Hill.
But it wasn't just Charles; they were getting whipped up front too.
They weren't getting pressure, and they weren't getting the Garbers.
Right.
So there was a lot there about that. Kyle Quinn comes in with a super chat for you, Sip. can we have Steve Sipple personally call Ryan Walters to be Nebraska's next defensive coordinator?
I'm probably not the guy to make that call, but somebody could. I mean, now, hey, Kyle, I would say this. When Purdue hired Walters, I was very critical of the hire as a head coach, but I wouldn't be critical of that hire as a defensive coordinator. You've heard of the Peter principle. That's when a leader just goes one notch too high. I think Bill Callahan was an example of the Peter principle. He just went one notch too high. He's not a head coach. Walters just went a notch too high. But as a defensive coordinator, yeah, I could see that. Bring him.
And look, I don't know.
He just won't let me interview.
Yeah, how this will all play out, but internally, I think John Butler would be the leading candidate. I don't think anybody would disagree with that.
No, you're right.
Especially,
you're right. Internally,
because you had one before, an Evan Cooper, that was kind of, and he's gone.
Yeah, he's gone. Now, I don't know if Butler. I mean, Butler just hasn't had a lot of college defensive coordinator experience of late, right?
No, Penn State would fill with
COVID year.
Well, he was at Penn State as the defensive coordinator all the way back.
Oh no,
not COVID year. Yeah, way back.
Right, 2000. Yeah, I was thinking of the scandals and
Bill O'Brien.
Not that COVID
Bill
was
O'Brien.
A scandal, kind of. But anyway, so no, it was like 2013, 2014. So clear back.
Yeah, he was the D coordinator for Bill O'Brien, and then he
Yeah.
had been a 10-year assistant
Right.
for Houston, and then obviously Buffalo.
Yeah.
But
was like, yeah.
would I mean could if
Oh,
this
you
all-
could sell it to me. You could sell Butler to me.
could Snow come back in the building?
Snow in his mid 60s. Now Phil Snow had great success with Rhule at Temple and Baylor. I mean, go back and look at the numbers. When those programs got rolling, Snow was a big reason.
And he was
for it.
Pat Tillman's defensive coordinator at Arizona State, correct? Or was he just a defensive
he was
assistant?
he was Nebraska. He was the defensive coordinator for Arizona State when they shut out Nebraska in the Fiesta. Well, not
with
the Fiesta
Jake
Bowl.
Plummer.
No, excuse me, not the Fiesta Bowl. It was a regular season game. Yeah, they had Plummer and they won 19-0 in the desert.
Pat Tillman, I believe, was
Yeah,
on
it was
that
Frosty was a quarterback for Nebraska.
So that's another option, or you go completely. And when you talk about the hire of Tony White, when Matt Rhule brought him here, that was kind of completely out of the box, other than the fact that they did kind of pass. They were two passing ships in the night at UCLA.
Yeah, that's it. Not much connection. Which again, what people are wondering right now as they're listening to us, Sean, that we need to readdress is why is this happening? Why is Tony White leaving? That's the question.
That's why 2,000 people are watching this show right now, by the way.
Yeah, the question in people's minds is why is he taking a job at a school that just went 2-10 in a lesser conference
with a head coach that could get fired?
Yeah, why is he leaving?
Was it his choice? Is it better? I mean, like,
good question.
Did he not like the direction of where it was heading with him? Yeah, there's a lot of things that are going to get sorted out probably in the next 24 hours when and generally how it goes is Nebraska does not announce departures. They do not confirm departures of players. Generally, they do not confirm departures, definitely of coaches. They let other schools announce a new coach. That's usually the protocol.
Yeah, if you're a Nebraska fan, what you're hoping is something happens at the last minute that changes this, right? But you're not of that mind.
I've heard nothing, and again, we've had nobody, trust me, our platform is big enough that there would be somebody that would try to stop the report. I mean, there's 2,000 people watching this show right now.
Right. I don't, when I saw the War Chant report, my thought was this has to be over.
Yeah, and War Chant is as plugged in as anybody in the Tallahassee market. I mean, Gene Williams, Ira, Jeff Cameron. I mean, they are the number one sports talk people. They run the largest website, and Ira, the editor there, used to be the editor of the Tallahassee newspaper. So they have a very, very good staff there.
So our people understand that are watching this right now. Matt Rhule will address the media on signing day. That was previously scheduled. Nothing in relation to this, but that's what this. Listen, Sean, a signing day press conference. The signing day part will be very secondary now, right?
I'm going to actually see if we can get Jeff Cameron to join us from Tallahassee. Yeah, Matt Rhule will talk Wednesday, or is expected to talk Wednesday.
You mean Cameron right now?
Yeah, to join our show live.
Oh, that'd be great.
So we're doing this on the fly here, but let's get some Florida State commentary because he owes me. I had to go on with him right away.
That'd be wonderful. Jeff's great too. Is there any more super chats in the meantime?
Yeah, we got more here. Next one, Hugh. What players do we most have to worry about leaving now? And I think it's 2024. You have to worry about every player leaving.
But the Florida ones in particular.
So here's something else to chew on. Just chew on this, Stephen M. Sipple. Phil Simpson, the architect of Nebraska's Florida recruiting last year, along with Evan Cooper. Phil Simpson is down at Florida State as a defensive analyst.
Great.
And
wonderful.
All of those kids,
wonderful.
Ja'Cory Barney, Vincent Shavers, Willis McGahee,
Sanders.
He was the lead guy along with Cooper, but he's a former Miami high school football coach. So I think a lot of those things really played a factor in this.
Hugh, thank you for the $2, and there's your answer.
All right, before we get into more super chats, thanks again for joining us. We got over 2,000 live viewers on right now on HuskerOnline Live as we talk Tony White's departure. We are brought to you by HelloFresh. Look, no one likes to cook. No one likes to go to the grocery store to buy all the things to buy a recipe and make a recipe. HelloFresh, they make it so easy to do. You pick the meals you want, and they send you grocery bags and coolers with all the ingredients, all the spices, the produce, everything you need, along with an easy-to-follow recipe card to make fresh meals at your house. We've used HelloFresh now all year. My kids love it. My family loves it. It is so easy and fun to do and make different things you normally wouldn't make because you just don't know how to do it or you don't have time to go to the store and buy that. And we've got a great special with HelloFresh right now. They're going to give you 10 free meals at HelloFresh.com/freehusker. That's HelloFresh.com/freehusker. Those 10 free meals will be applied over 7 boxes to new subscribers only. It varies by plan. That's 10 free HelloFresh meals. Just go to HelloFresh.com/freehusker. Thanks again to HelloFresh for sponsoring us here on HuskerOnline Live. But let me see here. We got a question about recruits. And is that the one from Adam? Did we do that one already? Yeah, we did players leaving.
Well, we just addressed it.
Signing day is on Wednesday. So
we didn't just address the recruits. We addressed the current players. What do you think about the recruits? Too early to say.
It's Wednesday is the signing day. So if you're a guy that would be up at arms about this, you'd have to make this decision now and have somewhere else to go. And you can't take a visit somewhere. So you would be opening your recruiting all the way until February. And if you're an early enrollee, that might, in 13 of the 19 commits are early enrollees. So that would mean you are delaying your arrival somewhere and not being able to maybe get there, or you're just going to commit and sign somewhere sight unseen. So could it happen? Yes. Do I think it will? No. And that's why the timing of this is awful. But it happened at Central Florida too. I mean, they had the coordinator move there as well, with Gus Malzahn following to Florida State. But people you talk to at Florida State say that Malzahn was on the way out. He was going to get pushed out of Central Florida, and this was his way to get ahead of the execution squad. So
as far as the roster goes, the current roster, again, the main guys you worry about, I'd say, are McGahee and Vincent Shavers, because those are Florida kids, and Sanders. And is there somebody I'm missing, Sean?
McGahee, Sanders,
Shavers,
Barney.
Oh, yeah, I was thinking defense. But you could lose an offense.
I don't expect Ja'Cory Barney, but I'm just saying,
I was thinking defense.
They were tied to that Philip Simpson tree.
Great.
And what I'm just throwing this out there. What if Evan Cooper joined down there?
Yeah.
There's just a lot of things that come to my mind doing this job, but you hope it wouldn't play out that way. But I've seen things happen. You know how things go.
Oh, it's gotten weird with the portal. It gets weird now. If you're a Nebraska fan, you hope that there's a loyalty those kids have developed to this program, to Vincent Shavers, who played a lot of football, McGahee, who as a true freshman, McGahee, who got on the field as a true freshman. You hope that there's some loyalty there. Those guys would be under the purview of Rob Dvorak, right? Shavers and McGahee.
And, and Tony White. But you got to remember too, some of those analyst guys that were up there that moved into the new on-field roles, they also were white guys from Syracuse that came with it. Remember, there were 2 or 3 of those guys.
Yeah. Again, all this circles back to how much do you trust Matt Rhule? Because there's got to be more staff movement. I mean, in addition to White, you're talking about the possibility of analysts leaving. You're talking about the possibility of Knighton leaving, which looks like it's a real good possibility.
Again, though, it's not been confirmed. I will say this. The players did lift today. I confirmed that. And it was real quiet. It was a very business-like, quiet morning in the weight room.
Here's the thing, Sean. Those kids, they're not going to react. I mean, like, they're not going to be up in arms, they're not going to be howling. I mean, it is what it is. It's an informative conversation in that I've always kind of said, be careful if you're a player committing to a certain assistant coach, because as you know, the days of Nebraska's staff just staying intact year after year after year after year after year after year, like it used to with, Osborne, Solich, those days are pretty much over.
Yeah, you could do that back when coaches made $50,000 a year.
Right.
But now when these coaches are making millions and 500,000, 800,000, it's a different game.
Yeah. You don't expect your staff to stay intact. So I don't expect the kids. I mean, there's going to be some strong feelings, but there's going to be some kids are a little indifferent about it. They still got to play football.
Bangarang. I'm just saying it that way because that's how I like to say his name. Comes in a lot of speculation about John Butler, Tony White not agreeing. Have you heard that? I will say this: there was only one time where I might have been on the radio show when Tony White was on the radio, or it was either to us, one or the other. But that he said that Butler wasn't shy, and definitely was a guy that would speak up, and he's one of those Philly guys. They talk fast. He kind of made that joke once. That's the only.
Yeah, I've never heard anything substantial. And the way I always react to that is if there was some disagreements, would you really be surprised?
No.
I mean, I always use this example. George Darlington and Charlie McBride just didn't get along, okay? But it worked because they made it work professionally. You think Charlie McBride and George always agreed on everything? No way. No way. I think you see that on a lot of staffs. There's disagreements. There's tension. Oh, my God, Sean, I could go on and on about it. Yeah, when Pelini's staff, when Pelini was here, and I'd hear a lot, obviously, because I talked to Bo all the time. Yeah, of course there was tension.
I mean, we have tension sometimes.
Yeah.
It's
was there tension between White and Bo? Yeah, probably. But does that mean one of them wants to leave or both of them want to leave? No.
The thing about
sometimes,
Butler,
I guess, but it's pretty common in that heated of an environment for tempers to flare.
His presence here this season was so under the radar.
John Butler,
if he walked in to Super Saver, as we like to use that analogy, I don't even know if he'd be recognized by anybody.
I'd guess that if there's 100 people in there, 98 would not recognize him. Yeah.
He was very under the radar for a guy that came in that role.
Yeah. Glenn Thomas and him have similar approaches. They're very, hat
out
down,
of sight, out of mind.
Hat down. We're just doing our job here.
All right. Nick Swanson, who would be on Rhule's short list for new defensive coordinator? And I think we've hit on a few. Internally, John Butler. Externally, Phil Snow. And then outside of that, is there a name on the outside? That's hard to say.
Well, it's kind of like, you have to invoke Tony White in that discussion because Tony kind of came out of nowhere, right? When he was hired, Tony White we weren't thinking Tony White when Rhule named him.
No. And that goes back to, do you think he initially always approached Phil Snow, like being his loyal?
Yeah, let's stop there. Yes, I do. I have intel on that. I do think that
his first call was to Phil Snow.
What I've heard is that Snow was his first choice, Phil Snow. So maybe maybe he would get. Now, Snow just wasn't, he was just coming off Carolina and maybe just wasn't ready to dive back in. Now you wonder if that's where Rhule will go. Just like he went to Holgerson, right? He had those two guys in here. Maybe Phil Snow saw what he saw and would take this job. It's very possible.
Yeah. And that we've hit on this too, a couple times in the show, just that moment of, like, look, he had been a consultant all year, supposedly, but him coming in the building, there just had to be a different tone to that.
Yeah.
They downplayed it as much as they could.
Yeah.
But I have a hard time. If you're Tony White, how did you take that?
Right. You wonder.
Your boss's former DC comes in to give you some ideas.
Yeah. Or check your operation out. I mean, any working person can relate to that your boss tells you we're bringing someone in just to see how you're doing it and see if there can be any tweaks. That's going to cause some tension, right? That you have someone over your shoulder for days at a time. Yeah, it's going to cause some problems.
Jeff Cameron, I think, is on the air, so we're not going to be able to get Jeff on.
It's okay. We can keep rolling.
He said he could come on at 3. I go, I don't know if we're going to be on until 3. No, but
I got to still write a column, Sean.
Let's move it on to Spark Adventures. He's got a couple comments here, but mainly he wants to go hire Bo Pelini. Sip, you still communicate with Bo every now and again. That's not happening.
No, Bo's not. No, he's not. I don't think. No. I mean, Bo's one of those guys that, I don't think he wants to work for too many people.
Yeah, it's just. Look, I'm more interested with the bowl game, what that operation is going to look like.
Well, John Butler might solve that, right? Or Phil Snow. Again, I this is what I'm writing for tomorrow. I keep going back to it. You really hope that Rhule has a good handle on this stuff. Largely these conversations are about one question: how much do you trust Rhule, right? Because now the boss has to make some critical decisions quickly at a time when he's dealing with a lot of other things, namely the portal, getting his class finalized. And now think about his job today. Just think about Sean, all you got to do is put yourself in his shoes right now.
Well, think about if it was the old rules where the coaches were on the road today.
I don't know how it'd be untenable almost.
You'd have 10 coaches out everywhere.
Yeah.
And not knowing what the hell's going on.
Right. So now some people are going to look at this and go, is Ed Foley going to slide through because all this stuff has happened? Ed Foley sort of dodged some, I'd say, fan and media scrutiny this year when Satterfield's offense started going really bad, right? And then they brought in Dana. We weren't even talking about the special teams.
But there were more block kicks, block punts, kickoffs caught out of bounds, muff punts, and bad snaps on PAT's extra points than we've ever seen in a year at Nebraska.
And ultimately, I would say that the special teams, the lack of strong special teams, ultimately is what cost Nebraska against Iowa. Wouldn't you say that? If you had to cite one area of the game, you'd say special teams. Do you know, now as a Nebraska fan, I would be really angry by that because that could have been a gigantic win if not for shoddy special teams. That win would have been huge to this program. To beat Wisconsin and Iowa back to back and get to 7-5 with a chance to win 8 in Tampa. That's a whole lot different conversation than the one we're having now.
Yeah, we're like,
you probably still would have lost White though.
Yeah, that's what we don't know what would have happened in that situation. And I do want to promote this. I mentioned the bowl game, and we got a lot of people viewing. If you're interested in the bowl trip, and we don't know where it's going to be, it could be Nashville, it could be New York, it could be Charlotte, it
could be Phoenix.
We do have information that you can sign up for. We are working with EB Sports with the bowl game trip, and you can get on the email list. The email address is ebsports.com/teams/Nebraska/HuskerOnline. That's ebsports.com/teams/Nebraska. /HuskerOnline. I've put that out on HuskerOnline as well on Twitter. But if you want to get on the email list, and within like 30 minutes of me putting that up, over 100 people have already submitted their emails to find out information. So there is interest on this bowl trip coming up, depending on where it is. I mean, I think Nashville, home run. New York, I question what that will be.
How about Phoenix?
Phoenix is the 26th, and that's far down the list. I just don't know if they go to Phoenix because it's the last pick. And then the other one is Charlotte with that Matt Rhule, Carolina Panthers angle there.
That you don't like.
That you don't really want, probably. So a lot of this is Michigan. Will Michigan take Tampa from Iowa? And look, what is Iowa now that Caleb Johnson's not going to play in the bowl game?
Opted out.
He will. Well, he's going to the NFL.
Yeah.
He's going to, be an All-American and had a great year. But I think if you're Caleb Williams and the thought of having to go against a really, really good SEC defense, Caleb Johnson, that was going to be tough.
Yeah.
And, get out now while you can. But Iowa, to me, doesn't look near as attractive for a bowl game.
Hell no.
They got 5 first downs with Caleb Johnson.
Yeah. They're 0 for 10 on third down, still won. They're 0 for 10 on third down.
So will bowl game organizers like Tampa, are they going to look at that and say, you know what, we'd rather put Michigan in the ring against an SEC team?
Mm-hmm.
Or here's another scenario. New York, they like to have a different team every single year. So get this. I pulled this up last night. There have been 9 pinstripe bowls over the last 10 years. 2020, no game. 9 different teams have played in the pinstripe bowl. 9.
That would point to Nebraska.
So there's been 2 of the available pool that have not played in the pinstripe bowl. Michigan and Nebraska.
Yeah, that points to Nebraska.
And Rutgers and Minnesota were the last 2 Big Ten teams to play in New York.
Yeah.
So Scott Dockerman, who does a great job covering the Big Ten, said the pinstripes motive and the Big Ten's motive all along was to try to get 10 different teams over 10 years.
Right.
And Nebraska and Michigan are the 2. And that's why I know Husker fans probably aren't too fired up about going to a freezing cold potential game in New York, but that is a possibility with the history of how the Pinstripe Bowl is picked with the Big Ten.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's go ride the subway in the Bronx. That'll be good. Anyway.
Did you say go eat at Subway or ride the subway?
Ride the subway. Yeah. Eat a Subway would be fine.
Maybe not.
No, maybe not.
Be like $40 for a foot long, $40 foot long. No.
Oh God.
All right. We're going to
good
get canceled here before
you
on.
are.
Mac comes in. How soon should we hire? Okay. Now, how soon should we hire another defensive coordinator?
That depends who it is.
Internally, if it's John Butler, it's done like that week.
Or Phil Snow, it could be done immediately.
Yeah, and knowing how the rules work, Rhule could just
hold on. Question, Sean, just hit me like a lightning bolt. Okay, the Rhule brought in Phil Snow during the bye week, so we'll say, what was that, November 11th or around there? Is it possible, Sean, that Rhule already knew what was going on with White and said, Phil, come in here because you might be coaching you might be coaching this group of guys you're about to analyze.
Yeah, whatever happened after the UCLA game, did that change? Three losses in a row. Did that change the tenor of the conversation?
Did it change the nature of Rhule's relationship with White? How much did Rhule himself get involved with the defense?
And at that point was the bed made.
Right. Then you bring in Phil Snow, and it's a little more meaningful than just, hey, he's gonna take a look at what's going on. Yeah, he took a look at it. Maybe you brought him in for the purposes of Phil assessing if he can make this work next year with this personnel, which I would say is still pretty good, even with the losses.
Yeah. Why? If he had been, quote, consulting all year, why did he need to come in?
It's a good question.
I mean, we know why Dana came in, but hey, Dana at that point didn't know like he was going to take over.
He had no idea.
And even the first few days, it was pretty rocky. I think.
Right.
Just like,
right. He has said very candidly, I didn't come in here thinking I was going to take over the offense. It just evolved very quickly. So, yeah, I think the tea leaves are suggesting some things that we might never know.
Now, Alex Fall on Super Chat comes into the great comment and point. Doesn't this have to do more with White timing career moves with the senior exodus from the defense?
Yeah,
he's leaving what would be an inexperienced defense to a clean slate narrative-wise at Florida State.
Well, here's the deal with that. It's not going to be a defense bereft of experienced talent. Bayer's a senior. He'll be a senior. Okay. That's 49 tackles. Hartzog will be a senior. Sierra Wright, you would say, is a very good corner, right? Buford's back as a senior. Stephon Thompson got pretty good against the run. He's back. Jamari Butler has announced he's coming back up front. Shavers is supposed to be back. Sean, up front, you have James Williams coming back. That's 5.5 sacks. Okay. Umanellian, however you pronounce it. Yeah, he's back. Cam Lenhart should be back. Elijah Judy back.
Will there be an effect?
Hold on. I'm still going. Keona Davis back. Willis McGahee should be back. Jeremiah Charles back. Judy. I mentioned Judy. No, there's talent back.
But will any of those guys follow White?
That's the question.
I mean, Kurt Cignetti has shown us how to do it.
I know.
Could you have a Cignetti situation where guys follow White?
That's a disaster. If any of those guys, any three of those guys that I named leave, it's not good.
And Nebraska has money, but Florida State's got money too.
Yeah.
And like their collective will.
It's not a crazy rich collective that Florida State has, though. I don't think. I think my brother's a part of it, so I should know some of that.
All right. We got Mac, and this one's for you, Sip. Would Bill Bush be interested? Is he good enough? And
what,
look,
the defensive coordinator job?
I don't think that's happening. I mean,
you wonder about specials, but there's no move made on Foley. So again, Foley, that name is still out there, something that I think has to be dealt with. Am I off base on that, Sean?
No. I mean, I think there's questions with some of the things that happen, especially with how the game was lost
at Iowa.
With the punt and the bad snap. And
the punt.
And I, there was some thought like, well, Iowa touched that ball first. It still didn't matter. That was a live ball,
right?
Like, because if Iowa touches it, Nebraska can still pick it up and return it. Right. It's not a dead ball.
No, and you could say too, Sean, and anybody watching could be saying this right now. Sipple, lighten up. There's nothing Ed Foley could have done to prevent Isaiah Garcia Castaneda from backing away from that ball suddenly inside the 5 or inside the 8, whatever it was. I mean, we always do this thing, Sean, where we cite the coaching in that situation. And I think that's a real conversation, but I mean, at the end of the day, that was a grown man, IGC, making a. I believe
he's a 6-year senior.
Yeah, he got caught like what the analogy is between hops. He's like a shortstop in a baseball game that got caught between hops and just made a bad decision.
Mr. Mitchell Jr., late to the show, so apologies. If you have already discussed, since it is a lateral move, it speaks volumes. What's happening behind the scenes that we aren't seeing, or is FSU a better program now?
2-10. I mean, not 2-10. Okay, 13-1 last season. I get that, but also I'm surprised you haven't mentioned this, because you always sing this tune about the Big Ten and the SEC or the power conferences, and then there's the ACC, and then there's the others. He's taken a move to the ACC, Sean,
and they're not going to have as much money,
right? So it's a valid question to wonder if something was going on behind the scenes. We've addressed it a lot of this show. It could be something we never know, because I don't think Tony White wants to come out and say it, and I don't think it would be good for Matt. See, here's the thing that people wonder. It wouldn't be good for Rhule to come out and say, yeah, I made a move there, right?
No. I mean, I think I'm looking to see if his contract is on the transparency page, and it just has head coaches, but
who's that?
Tony White. I was just trying to, because there are some things about his contract with buyout terms and whatnot that, you would like to know how much Florida State's on the hook for, and that might be why this has not been made public by them yet.
Yeah. I mean, we should make clear that it's not official. There's no formal announcement.
Warchant, our affiliate, though, on the On3 network is who broke the news.
And they put a headline on it, breaking, Florida State has a new defensive coordinator, Tony White.
Just making sure nothing's happening. I'm checking my phone as we speak here, but yeah, it's a interesting tone, no doubt. Mr. Mitchell Jr., I hate to speculate. This is the second lateral move our athletic program has seen in less than a year. What's the other one? Trev Alberts?
Yeah. Yep. That was curious too, right? That was curious.
What led? Well, I don't know why he would. I think there was more to that. But
right.
All right, before we roll into some more super chats, again, HuskerOnline, thanks for joining us. Nearly 2,500 live viewers watching as we react to the news of Tony White potentially off to Florida State. If you're not a member of HuskerOnline, check us out. We also got a great partnership with Homefield Apparel. They've got a Black Friday sale going on right now at Homefield that runs through the 3rd. And you're going to get 30% off site-wide on everything at Homefield Apparel. That's all the custom Husker gear, any team you want. They have all the colleges, and this is the unique gear, the cool stuff that you're not going to necessarily find at your favorite box store in town or wherever you live. Go to homefieldapparel.com. You have to use the promo code BFCM24. That's BFCM24. And that's going to give you 30% off at Homefield Apparel. Again, promo code BFCM24. Thanks to Homefield for sponsoring us on the special edition of HuskerOnline Live. Okay, we're going to go into QB1 Ace. Could Tony White leaving be because he thought NU wasn't going to be good next year and that FSU has nowhere else to go but up?
Well, I mean, of course, that could be a factor. Nebraska again loses its top 3 tacklers, four of the top 7 of the top 12. But we've covered this, that they have a lot of guys back. I didn't even mention Bly Hill, who could start. I hope I mentioned Van Poppel, who's a huge part of this.
Sierra Wright's back.
Yeah, I mentioned a bunch of guys. I mean, the key guys, I think the fourth leading tackle was fourth leading tackler was Mekhi Bayer, who had 6 TFLs and 49 stops. Hartzog, he gets picked on a bit at defensive back, but he'll be a senior. He's seen a lot. Sierra Wright, I mean, those guys are huge. Marquise Buford, huge. Jamari Butler, gigantic in the equation. Shavers, James Williams, don't forget about James Williams up front. Prince Will, Lenhart, Judy. They got Sean. I just kind of resist this talk that there's going to be a big letdown on defense
if they stay.
Yeah. Yeah, right. That's true. Yeah. Now you're losing a potential like 3rd, 2nd, maybe even low first rounder. And that's big. That's hard to absorb that hit because Ty Robinson at the end of the year had developed into quite a force, like almost unblockable at times. And Nash was tough too. That was a hell of a duo. And you're losing that, and that's going to be tough.
I mean, just think about their moments in short yardage.
Oh God,
there couldn't have been a better group in the country than Nebraska in short yardage. I mean,
wonderful in short yardage.
Just destroy Kyle Monungai, to destroy Colorado,
on and on,
destroy Ohio State.
Ohio State couldn't get short yard.
Caleb, I mean, these were some of the top rushing attacks and backs in the country,
and Iowa really had no prayer in short yardage.
When it was 4th and 1, 3rd and 1, mano y mano, Nebraska won that like 80%. I bet. They seldom
lost.
They seldom lost those downs.
Oh, and they were beautiful to watch in those situations. Just ferocious. Those guys are not, I mean, and that's just not Nash. That's just not Nash and Ty. That's Jamari and Bullock. That's Javin Wright. I'm just thinking of guys who always pop in there, you know. Bayer's definitely in that conversation. Bayer's a tough dude, Sean. So yeah. No, they have guys back.
The other Dave comments, could this simply be Phil Snow finally saying yes to our DC position?
Maybe.
I mean,
I think my intelligence, my sources would suggest that Snow was the original guy that Rhule wanted. Now that conversation can be complicated because Rhule might have had a few guys in mind, but I guarantee you Snow was, if he wasn't at the top of the list, he was very close. And then, as you remember, on a winter day in late 2022 or early 2023, Tony White's name popped into the picture from nowhere.
Yeah, it was a Pete Thamel who I believe, went to Syracuse, if not.
Yeah, just popped up
and
from
he
nowhere.
broke that story. Yeah. And we were driving around on a Friday. It was a Friday, I remember. And I think we came up here.
Now, I wrote the story. I remember that. I was at home when I wrote it. I remember that.
Sounds like we'll be writing some more stories. Mm-hmm. But and I like doing these shows because we're so busy. It's hard to talk on the phone, but doing the shows, talking with the fans, it helps me. I mean, I like doing this because we have a lot of intelligent fans that have great questions right now, and we appreciate.
Oh, it really helps me put together things in my head for a column, which I got to go right here pretty quick. So let's keep rolling.
All right. Matthew comes in. Rhule likely knew this was coming.
Yeah.
1, get the offense in order. Dana Holgorsen. 2, key members of the D announced their return. Elijah Judy. I don't know who else the other key members would be. 3.
Who else? Butler and Buford. Hey, Sean.
Butler, Buford, Judy.
Yeah.
3, the timing of the announcement limits defectors on the incoming recruits. 4, risk roster defectors. Good point there from Matthew, and thank you for the super chat, Matthew.
So now get Dana Holgorsen. That's, again, Rhule has a lot on his plate.
It's not about paying Dana Holgorsen either. It's about selling Dana Holgorsen because he's getting paid.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I hear people say back up the Brinks truck. Well, you don't have to do
He's
that.
making 4.5 from Houston.
Because of the Houston contract.
So legally, Nebraska can get away with as low as 800 and Houston's on the hook.
Right. It's not a money.
For 3.7.
Not a money discussion.
So there's no backing up the truck. You're not going to pay Holgorsen $5 million.
No.
Mike Schuster. So when does Rhule lock down Dana instead of having no coordinators? And I mean, it feels like Dana is somewhat locked down. I mean, Cortez Mills could be flipping this week. We've heard some, rumblings of his involvement, and the offense has looked better under Dana. They need to upgrade the overall top end wide receiver on this roster.
He can help with that. And by the way, you have Dylan Raiola, who's
gives you a short window.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. Mac comes in again. If White leaves, Foley has to go too, right, Sean? Look, we've hit on this. We've talked on this. If you're going off what's happened with special teams, it's hard not to be critical. And we've hit on all the things that we've talked about: the bad snaps, the block punts, the 3-block, the multiple block field goals.
Gave up some. They were a little leaky on coverage,
catching kickoffs out of bounds.
Yeah, they don't even return punts. It's like something that's a foreign concept to Nebraska. Don't defend that.
They're close to blocking some punts this year. Never got to them though.
Right.
They did run one good fake, but yeah.
Oh, there were some good elements, and they got better. The long snapping got better. For a few, there's a stretch of games where it wasn't an issue. Then it reared its ugly head at a very much a wrong time, and that's a problem. I mean, that you can't just say, well, it was good SIP for 4 or 5 games, and then they just had it snap up again. Yeah, that's how you lose your job. When your phase of the game, when your units are largely responsible for a loss to a rival in that situation, you should come under heavy scrutiny. Is that wrong? Am I wrong?
Right. And some breaking news here to report. Vincent Carroll Jackson has entered the transfer portal.
Oh, God. Now, didn't play a lot late. Saw a little action he's a defensive lineman. It was a redshirt freshman this year, right, Sean? Yeah, redshirt freshman
from Pennsylvania, late take in the 2023 class.
Saw some time last year and this year, but did you notice his snaps decreased?
Yeah, he wasn't a part of the rotation, the heavy rotation.
No, I wouldn't regard this as a sizable loss. In fact, I could see this one being him meeting with the staff and them suggesting maybe you look around.
It may not get better than this. And
Right.
in fact, I'm going to give you a full snap number on him right now. I'm pulling that up here. Let's see. Yeah, he only played 56 snaps in 9 games.
Okay. Do you have a game-by-game snap
Yeah, I'm going to
count?
pull that up here. So he played 4 snaps against Wisconsin, 4 against Ohio State, 8 against Indiana, 3 against Rutgers, 3 against Purdue, 10 against Illinois, 11 Northern Iowa, 2 Colorado, 11 UTEP. So his high games were UTEP and Northern Iowa at 11 snaps.
Right. Then they waned.
He did not play against Iowa when Riley Van Poppel became available.
Right. His snaps decreased as the season went on. Is that what it's showing?
You were correct.
Yeah.
On the 56 plays that he played, he produced 1 QB pressure. It was a hurry.
Right.
He had 1 tackle. So,
right.
you know, like you got to, I think it's important, as we said, always put context in
100.
things.
Yeah, 100.
But yeah, Vincent Carroll Jackson in the transfer portal played 50, making this tweet as we do this, played 56 snaps.
You tweet and
Phil,
so far,
tap dance for me, Mr. Stipple.
Vincent Carroll Jackson and Gabe Irvin Jr. are 2 guys we know. Again, Gabe Irvin Jr., just there wasn't a path to playing time for him. He got pushed back by the emergence of Emmett Johnson and Dante Dowdell. They brought in a guy built much like Gabe Irvin and Dante Dowdell. And Dante Dowdell's, Sean, I'll just go ahead and say it. He's much more athletic than Gabe, much more explosive. Overall athleticism is really not even close. And that's why, Irvin just couldn't get on the field.
All right. Well, so 2 in, and the portal doesn't even open, but what's going on now are guys get ahead of it. In some ways, I think it's wise to announce this week before opening day on Monday next week, because you're probably going to generate some contact at least at this point. But Vincent Carroll Jackson out of Pennsylvania.
Those 2 won't be the last today is my guess.
No. And it used to be like we'd freak out and like, you got to write a story. I mean, this has become part of like the business now. Yeah. It's just the reality of college football where things go. Jalen West, if Knighton leaves with White, I presume we will lose James Williams, because James has said multiple times that Knighton is like a father to him.
Yeah, you wonder about that.
Yeah, remember when it was like an emotional, like he was with me when nobody else was with me. And
yeah, you definitely wondered. Hey, Jalen, that's a really good point. Yeah, you definitely wonder about that. You do. Now, James Williams, to me, now I think me and you differ on James Williams a little bit. I would regard that as a sizable loss, because he's one of the team's best pass rushers, and his sack total of 5.5 would suggest that. In fact, am I right about that sack total? 5. He had 5 sacks.
How many did he have over the last 6 games though?
Well, I'm not sure, but Ty had 6. So Ty had 6. Williams was second with 5. I mean, Williams to me is a huge loss if he would leave. Now we don't know he's leaving, but that would be one where you might have to write a story, Sean.
Yeah, James Williams. So from the Rutgers game, so from Indiana on, he had 1 sack. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Over the final 6 games, James Williams had 1 sack.
How many pressures?
He produced over the final games 4 hurries, 3 QB hits, and 1 sack.
So he was still very viable. That's
not near as viable as he started the year. But some of the opponents they played early allowed that. Like Colorado wasn't running.
Right.
And you could just
James is I think the other guy we haven't mentioned much is Keona Davis. He's critical. He is a critical player to watch, and hope, if you're a Nebraska fan, that number 97 does not go in the portal.
All right, let's see. We've got Jared Moody, thank you. And he's got a question. How long are you guys going to be on? I want to listen, but I need to get back to work.
Yeah, well,
we weren't anticipating going an hour and 10 minutes, but I'm never surprised, Sipple, but there are 2,500 viewers almost online right now.
Yeah, we can go a little ways longer.
So we got a big lunch. It's a big lunch crowd today, and we appreciate that.
Perfect. Yeah, perfect.
Enjoy your lunch. You might get hangry after a bit here, Sip.
Oh, I'm okay. I just got a column I got to write.
Huge ass. What
I'm
players
sorry?
do we need?
What's his name?
Oh, God.
Ha,
Hugh.
ha!
Gosh,
God,
dang it,
You're doing
Hugh.
so well. You're doing so
I got
well.
tripped up at the very
What's
end.
the guy's name?
Oh,
Show it.
and that's an old super chat. I didn't even need to get to that one. We already did that one. Thank you. I've already said
How
Hugh.
does he spell it?
Hugh and then JASS.
How'd you get caught on that?
Because I'm in the zone, and when you're in the zone, you're not.
Huge ass got you.
I got tripped up by Hugh.
Sean.
All right, Mike Reich Miley. Rhule
Okay, that
said
was okay. That was
he
okay.
meddled by going to cover 4 quarters in the offseason and 5-man front versus Rutgers. How much was this season on Tony?
What do you mean on Tony? I mean, the defense was all right.
So
again, mixed, mixed.
He's bringing that point up where John Butler helped them put in some 4 quarters things and things that Tony had never done before.
Right. Again, you don't know that's why he would leave. I mean, Matt Rhule is going to be involved. He's that type of head coach.
No, but John Butler brought in some of those concepts and taught them to the staff. I do remember that interview on the radio or up front. One of the
but that wouldn't necessarily lead to White leaving.
No. I mean, I think we've nailed it. I think Indiana and UCLA were the weeks that turned it.
Caused some tension.
Internally. Something happened. To lead to where we're at today.
We think it could have caused some tension. And again, it's not just I call this informed speculation. Okay. I just want to be clear to our viewers. It's not all just speculation. It's informed speculation. Some of these answers you may never know clearly, or what I have found over the years, Sean, and you have found this too, you just don't verbalize it, is that sometimes you don't find out things for years. And then discussions with old coaches, discussions with maybe athletic department staff members. And then 3 or 4 or 5 years down the line, you're like, oh, that's what happened.
Yeah. Like when Richie Incognito left Nebraska, like I'm trying to think how many years later it was, like 8, 10 plus years later.
You found out.
He told me what he did to Callahan, that he picked up his desk and he threw it through a trophy case.
Right.
And we didn't know that then. But I remember, if I remember right, Sip, you tried to
I went over to South Stadium where the offices were at the time. And what I encountered were he and his father just fly in a Ford Bronco. I remember a red multi-hued Ford Bronco roaring out of almost hit me coming out of the parking lot. And they were ripping out of the parking lot. So it was tense.
If I remember right, they went up there thinking Callahan was going to give him a path to return to the team.
Yeah, that wasn't.
And the meeting was, you're off the team.
Yeah, and they were off.
And then he reacted, and he told me this. He goes, I picked up Callahan's desk and I threw it through a trophy case.
Right. See, there you go. There you go.
It had to marinate several years before that ever got out.
Right. There's a lot of pieces of info like that you learn later on.
Yeah, and somehow it's amazing that never really got out until Richie shared it. But I'm guessing Bill wasn't too proud of that moment either.
Well, it's not Bill's problem.
No, he's not one to tell that kind of stuff. But Josh Ward, why consider John Butler? The secondary took a nosedive from last year with busted coverages all year. He has done nothing in the college game to earn it.
I'm not gonna
push back.
Yeah, I mean, no, I am going to a little bit, Josh. I mean, I don't think you're too far off or off at all, but when I look at pass rush, I just don't look at the secondary. Or when I look at issues, giving up too many completions, long completions, etc. It's usually not just the secondary, right, Sean? It can be a pass rush issue, and the pass rush wasn't great coming down the stretch.
No, there were games where it was outstanding, like Ohio State.
Yeah,
I mean, they had to basically commit holding penalties that weren't called to stop the pass rush.
Then there's other games where the guy just had Wisconsin,
Indiana.
Yeah, where they just had too much time. And that's not necessarily that's not on the secondary all the time.
It felt like Nebraska didn't blitz as much this year as they did last year.
Probably felt like they didn't have to.
I felt like they dropped coverage more than brought heat.
Okay.
That was just my perspective from the press box.
Yeah, I don't see. I mean, they had some issues with coverage, but they also had issues with pass rush, so they're directly linked. And they had a couple linebackers that weren't great in coverage, Sean.
All right, Matt wants to come in. How does this affect incoming and future recruits?
That's the big question.
To be determined. Again, I've talked to one high school coach that's tied to a recruit that's very close to Tony White and Terrence Knighton. Nothing. They have not heard anything today. So
God, you're going to kill me. You're going to kill me for saying this. A lot of these questions just go back to what I initially said. How much do you trust Rhule? How much do those recruits trust Rhule? Right? The head coach, the power and the importance to me is incredible. And these programs, okay, why do I say that? Think about it. Think about the programs that have made these big turns. Dillingham at Arizona State, obviously. It was a coach that came in and had a huge impact. The Fran Brown at Syracuse comes in, boom, 9 wins. Signetti's the obvious answer. Lance Leipold. The coaches they're powerful, and they can have a huge impact if you get the right one. Doesn't always happen immediately. With Rhule at Baylor and Temple, it didn't happen immediately, but it happened. And if you're a Nebraska fan, you're hoping, okay, it's not happening like it did for Fran Brown, for Signetti, for Dillingham, but it'll happen. You just got to have faith.
Jacob just got here, but do we think Phil Snow is in the mix?
God, you would think
no matter what, Rhule will make a good hire because he's yet to have made a bad hire at the spot in his career. The sky is not falling, Husker Nation. And another thing about Phil Snow, I think that changes the conversation from when Matt Rhule first got here is a guy like Phil Snow would no longer have to go on the road.
Doesn't have to go on the road, right? He's in his mid-60s. He probably doesn't want to do that.
To me, especially as a 66-year-old,
yeah,
having to get on regional planes, not driving and doing a lot of, that wears on you.
It does. I want to be careful because Phil Snow might jump in that seat right there and say, no, I'd love to go out and recruit, but chances are no at this stage of his career.
Well, having to send like TikTok videos of yourself dancing to kids. And just the things that have changed for coaches.
Right. Oh, that's true.
Like, when coaches talk to kids, it's rarely a phone call anymore. It's a FaceTime.
Wonderful.
You always have to mainly do FaceTimes with coaches. But you have grandkids that are about that age, Sip. They don't like to talk on a phone.
No, they don't. No, they really don't.
And they actually don't like to text as much. It's when they have phone conversations, it's a lot of FaceTiming.
Right. You're right.
Which is, it's different. So as an older coach, you got to adjust to how kids want it.
Yeah.
How they want to communicate.
So yeah, Phil Snow, I don't know. I would think he'd be in play here. And if you would doubt his capability, I would ask you to do this. Go look at his defenses at Temple and Baylor and tell me that would be an excellent hire. Those were excellent defenses.
Now, somebody would say different league.
True.
But you could also argue, well, Texas was in the Big 12, and now they're going to win the SEC. Oregon was in the Pac-12. Now they're going to win the Big 10.
Yeah, good argument.
SMU was in the American. Now they're going to win the ACC.
Right.
Arizona State was in the Big 12. Now they're going to win maybe
they're in the Pac-12.
Yeah, and they're going to win the Big 12. Yeah. So the conference game, you can play it a lot of ways.
The Big Ten's quite a physical animal, though.
It's a grind, 9 games of it. But Lance, Rhule said we would lose around 30 to 40 guys to the roster changes. We all need to take a deep breath and understand that this is going to be a wild ride across college football. I trust Rhule. Look, yeah, we're not going to overreact about Gabe Ervin Jr. going in the portal.
Or Vincent Carroll Jackson.
We both agree for Gabe Ervin Jr., it's probably his best move to go in the portal. Yeah. Like this day, he's not going to pass up Dowdell or Emmett Johnson.
Jamarian's coming in.
And Parker's coming in. And
Jamarian Parker.
And you have the other guy they brought in late last year too, Mekhi Butler.
Yeah.
So they have options there. And, Carroll Jackson played 56 snaps, played 4 snaps versus Wisconsin, no snaps versus Iowa.
Yeah.
So you can't overreact to all these.
There's got to be more.
Scott's Tots seems like the smart thing to do is for Rhule to hire a DC somewhere else so he can bring his guys too. If Dana doesn't come back, holy hell.
Yeah, I've had coaches tell me now you can really enhance your profile if you can go to an AD and say, this is mainly applies to head coaches, but you could go to an AD and say, okay, if you hire me, I'm bringing these players with me. I suppose that can also, you can also say that about a defensive coordinator, like like White, maybe. God, I mean, I hope this didn't happen, but maybe he sold himself to Norvell by saying, "Hey, I can bring McGahee. Here's his film. I can bring Vincent Shavers. Here's his film." They got some film that's pretty good.
All right, Mark Donner, it's our final super chat as of now. What is the connection between Knighton and White, and what are the odds that he leaves as well?
Good.
And look,
Knighton leaving.
They never worked together, but one thing Sip and I have been able to do the last 2 years is we've traveled on the road to these satellite camps where you're around the coaches in more kind of a 24-hour all access view.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And one thing you pick up immediately is how close Knighton and White are.
Yeah.
They were very close.
Yeah. You also pick up that Knighton was close with a lot of these guys in his group. And that's what you hope. Like James Williams. Yeah, that was a great question. That was a great question by one of the super chatters. You wonder if those guys will take guys with them. That's college football now. Okay, that's what it is.
Signetti, what he did with Indiana, and you're even seeing it in college basketball at a smaller level, like the Northwest Missouri State coach, a Division II national champion basketball coach, took like 3 or 4 key players to Drake, and Drake is dominating. Drake's playing. I mean, so you're seeing this happen more and more, and it's not stopping.
No, this is the game. And again, got to trust the boss, man.
All right. Well, any final thoughts?
It's so here's my final thoughts. 12:58. There's a lot of people right now that need to get back to work on.
Yeah, 2,500 and some online though for this show.
Monday. It's Monday, guys. It's time to get to work. And by the way, I'm about 80% done with my column, Sean. I'll post my column by 3:00. Okay.
So Sipple will have more at Husker Online, and we have a promo right now on Husker Online. Get your first 7 days for $1 at Husker Online. It's our silly season promo. So log on, check that out. And again, I mentioned a lot of folks want to go on that bowl trip. We have a package set up. Now, we don't have the parameters and details because we don't know what bowl it's going to be. But make sure you visit ebsports.com/teams/Nebraska/HuskerOnline to join our email list. We had over 100 people join the list in the first 30 minutes. So there is a lot of interest to find details because, look, I will say traveling anywhere in December on short notice is not cheap. So at least doing it this way, we're going to guarantee you a direct chartered flight from Lincoln and possibly Omaha, depending on the interest. We could have 2 locations, hotel, transportation. So if Nebraska were to go to the Pinstripe Bowl, this would be the way to do it. You got a hotel, you got a flight into New York, you got a bus to get you to the hotel and back, into the game and back.
Oh, we should be taking that.
Yeah, so we might take this.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll see what happens here, but this will help you. And tickets are optional as far as game tickets, because we know a lot of people might already have allotment tickets they're going to get from the university, but flights, hotel, and a few other things as well are going to all be worked into this, including the transportation. And possibly, I know we're trying to set this up, but a Husker Online live show for the people on the trip.
Yeah, we definitely should do.
We got to get Zipline shipped out to wherever the bowl is.
Yeah. I don't know, maybe a zip line about 6:00 today.
I want to go to Nashville, though. I'm not going to lie. I've made that clear. Is that your choice of the options?
Yeah, I mean, I know we haven't really discussed it to this degree. You always play down Phoenix. I'd say Phoenix is my number one choice.
It's just so far down the list
Right,
of picks.
right.
It would almost have to take Troy Dannon declining it and not going there and say we want Phoenix instead.
Sean, that's an awful nice area in December.
On December 26th.
Oh, my God, that's a nice area.
Yeah, and you want to just get out. You don't want to deal with Christmas. You want to leave town.
Well, not that. It's not that. It's the heat. I like the heat. I like going in the desert.
My dad wants Phoenix. He leaves for the winter to Phoenix.
Yeah.
He's going to be down there. But
you can move Christmas. You can move it.
So it will be that will be something to watch closely here on that bowl package. But for Steve Sipple, I'm Sean Callahan. Thanks for joining us on this special edition of Husker Online Live.